Hello folks, it is Tuesday the 23rd of March 2021 and coming up on this episode of This Week we are going to talk Aussie Supercars, British touring cars, we're going to talk the DTM, MotoGP, World Endurance Championship, IMSA, W Series, Indycar, pretty much everything you can think of. There might be time for a bit of Formula One, there might not, who's to know, but it's all coming your way this week on the latest episode of This Week. Hello then folks, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to the latest episode of This Week. Thank you, as always, for your continued support. Thank you for hitting that subscription button and of course for ringing the notifications bell, for your comments, for your questions, which I do read, every single one of them. And of course, if you've already hit the merch line, that's massively appreciated. As I say, 20% of all profit that we make from the merch store goes direct to charity in the US, a fabulous charity called Every Kid Sports. And delighted to announce this week, I can now say that in the UK, we are helping a brilliant charity called Street Games. Both those charities aimed at helping underprivileged kids in the poorest parts of the UK and with Every Kid Sports in the US to play sports. It's so important for kids, particularly now in this time of COVID restrictions and pandemic and lockdowns around the world, to get kids out, to get them playing sport and all of the benefits that come along with that. So thank you. If you have made a purchase from the merch store, it is going good, as well as looking good as well. Now, as I said at the top of this, I'm probably not going to talk about Formula One today. So if you're here for the Formula One news, be redirected to the F1 season preview, which we posted last week, in which I go over all the runners and riders for the 2021 F1 season, who I think is where at the culmination of testing, because this has been a pretty quiet week in terms of F1 news. A couple of little snippets of F1 news, which I'll come to later, but it's not going to go front and center. It's not going to be the headline for this episode, because I want to start today with what I think is by far and away the biggest, coolest, most amazing story in motorsport this year, and it revolves around one man, Shane van Gisbergen, who you may remember started this year off returning to single seaters, ran the New Zealand Grand Prix and absolutely crushed it. Then didn't know if he was going to make it back to Australia for the start of the Supercars season because the Tasman COVID corridor, that's a mouthful, suddenly closed. But he did make it back in time and dominated the opening two races at Bathurst. Then he went and broke his collarbone in a mountain bike accident and turned up at Sandown Park last weekend pretty much under the weather. Qualified 17th. Won the opening race. A sprint race. One of the most incredible races. One of the most incredible drives you will ever see in any category. If you haven't, find it, watch it. And then he doubled up again with 2 more race wins. 5 races, 5 wins. Went to the doctor to check out whether running at Sandown had made his collarbone any worse, and discovered that not only had he broken his collarbone in that accident on his mountain bike, he cracked 3 ribs as well. It's unbelievable. Sticking with touring cars now, and Nick Hamilton, brother of 7-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton, has completed the lineup for the 2021 British Touring Car Championship, inking a deal to race with Team Hard at the wheel of a Cupra Leon. This week also saw Toyota Gazoo Racing unveil their Toyota Corollas for the British Touring Car Championship, which will be run by Speedworks with Rory Butcher and Sam Smelt at the wheel of the cars. And Honda finally admitted that 2020 was indeed the end of its 17-year collaboration with Team Dynamics. The BTCC season kicks off at Buxton on May the 8th. In the DTM, Danny Juncadella has been confirmed for Group M in its sole factory-supported Mercedes-AMG GT3 entry for 2021. In other driver news for the DTM, Sophia Flörsch has been confirmed in a third Audi running for Abt Motorsport. While we're with DTM, Marcel Fassler, a three-time Le Mans winner, World Endurance Champion, and of course DTM legend and sports car legend, obviously, has announced his retirement after 2 incredibly successful decades at the top of his game in motorsport. He will stay as sim driver for the Alfa Romeo F1 team, but you didn't know that. But his key role moving forward will be as team boss for the Swiss Sportec endurance racing team. Segueing nicely then into sports cars, and Sébastien Bourdais, Loic Duval and Tristan Vautier won, frankly, a bit of a crazy Sebring 12. Sebring, I never say it right, do I? Sebring. Why can't I pronounce American circuit names properly? Sebring 12. Only been doing this game for 20 years. The car had run much of the race a lap down, but it was a mad ending. The number 55 Mazda came in second, and in third was Jimmy Johnson's Cadillac, which had actually collided with the race-winning car and spun and done a whole load of damage, actually to both, within the opening 15 minutes of the race. If you guys aren't watching IMSA, that is something you need to change. The championship is just phenomenally competitive, always exciting. And if there's one racing series you need to get into in 2021, I seriously suggest you make it IMSA. Meanwhile, in other IMSA news, LMP2 outfit PR1 is set to make its WEC debut in the opening round of the season at Spa as it prepares for a Le Mans entry later in the year. G-Drive will also be running 2 Oricas, taking the LMP2 fields in the World Endurance Championship, at Spa at least, up to 14 cars. In the Le Mans hypercar class, questions remain over the entry for the 2 Glickenhaus 007s, and that is because there are serious doubts now over whether their cars will be homologated in time due to COVID-influenced delays. As we said, casting major doubt on whether that car can or can't now be signed off in time for the opening race of the season at Spa. Over in NASCAR, Ryan Blaney stole an excellent win from Kyle Larson, who led 269, I think, of 325 laps at Atlanta, but he overcooked his tyres in the last few laps and lost the lead to Blaney. Denny Hamlin leads the championship now on 277 points ahead of Kyle Larson on 230, with Martin Truex Jr. third on 212. Now, you may remember last year in the world of karting, Luca Corberi sparked international controversy and condemnation when he threw a bumper at a rival at the FIA World Championship race taking place at Lonato, before then hunting him down and attacking him after the race. The FIO's own representatives in the tribunal that was brought after that event have pushed for Corberi to have a lifetime ban from the sport. And sticking with karting, the McLaren F1 team, told you there'd be a little bit of F1 news, has signed 13-year-old American karter Ugo Ugachukwu to help him navigate his future path through racing. McLaren did that once before, signing a 13-year-old karter, Lewis something or other. No idea what happened to him. The W Series has announced that its planned pre-season test at Valencia's Circuit Ricardo Tormo will now not go ahead in late April. That has now been switched to the brilliant Anglesey circuit in Wales. Well, say in Wales, on Anglesey, from the 17th to the 21st of May, again due to COVID restrictions still limiting travel plans. Sticking with feeder series news, Bruno Michel, the boss of Formula 2 and Formula 3, has told motorsport.com that his 2 championships will stick with their current car for at least the next 3 seasons. There may be an upgrade kit that's brought to it, but that core car will remain at the heart of those championships for at least the next 3 years. As he says, in the world in which we live at the moment, there isn't the time or the funds or indeed the stress that anyone needs by introducing a new car. What they are going to do, though, is in that period, look at how they can move Formula 2 and Formula 3 towards potential hybridization, is that a word? And bringing in biofuels. So continuing down that path of sustainability and future-proofing those all-important feeder series for Formula 1. Formula 2 itself kicks off in Bahrain this coming weekend with an all-new championship format. There always used to be 2 races on a weekend, a feature race and then a sprint race, but now there will be 2 sprint races and then a feature race. All the talk, of course, this year about trial sprint races and feature races in Formula 1, but they're already doing something different in Formula 2. Essentially, there will be one qualifying session. The first sprint race, the grid will be formed by the results of qualifying with the top 10 positions inverted. The second sprint race will be the results of that first sprint race with the top 10 positions inverted, with the feature race on Sunday, quite simply just the results of that very first qualifying session from earlier in the weekend. Going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out this year. One more race for Formula 2, and it all kicks off, as we said, this weekend in Bahrain. In Formula E's Accelerate Esports competition, Aaron Jajowski, the Venturi racer, has put one hand on the championship trophy with another victory, this time in round 5 at the Electric Docks track. He leads Fredrik Rasmussen by 26 points going into the final round of the season, with Kevin Siggy sitting in 3rd. And sticking with esports, Indycar saw the first round of its iRacing Championship at the weekend, with new Ganassi signing Alex Palou kicking off his 2021 season in style with victory at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, leading pretty much every lap, having taken pole position. So a great start to the year for Alex Palou. Now over in the WRC, news of another surprise driver and co-driver split. And this time it's a huge one. It's Sebastian Loeb and Daniel Elena, who have announced their separation after a 23-year partnership. The decision appears not to have been a mutual undertaking, but one taken by Loeb and his Dakar Bahrain Raid Extreme team, who decided, quote, maybe it would be good to try something else. Oof. The duo tied up 9 WRC titles between them, between 2004 and 2012, making them the most successful driver and co-driver partnership in World Rally history. In MotoGP, Marc Marquez will miss the opening 2 rounds of the season in Qatar, as it was decided he is still not sufficiently recovered from the injuries he sustained last season. He will be reappraised before round 3. Meanwhile, Andrea Dovizioso, who is, of course, taking an enforced sabbatical and was at one point in the running to replace Marquez for the opening rounds of the season should he prove unwell, is going to get a test with Aprilia at Jerez in April. Of course, he's on this sabbatical after a less than happy farewell from Ducati, but Aprilia, it appears, is getting pretty serious towards Dovizioso after he had a very impressive run in pre-season testing. Almost at the end, and go on, let's get a little bit of F1 news in there. The championship has unveiled the monstrous circuit which will play host to Saudi Arabia's inaugural Formula 1 Grand Prix at the tail end of the 2021 season. It is a street circuit with an average speed of over 250 kilometers an hour. Overtaking could be tough, but it's going to be one hell of a challenge. And today, it was announced that the Grand Prix Drivers Association has appointed George Russell as a new director. I think a really solid choice, a very mindful, considered guy who will, I'm sure, take that role incredibly seriously and will do great things for the Grand Prix Drivers Association. Replacing, of course, the IndyCar-bound Romain Grosjean, who will remain as an advisor to the Grand Prix Drivers Association over the course of the next year. Perhaps even more relevant, though, is the appointment of Anastasia Fowl as a director. Now, she has been a long-term legal and strategic advisor for the body, and she's the first non-driver to be appointed at director level. I think that represents a significant show of intent from the organisation. Finally then, this week, sad news on which to end. Sabine Schmitz, the queen of the ring, has lost her battle with cancer at the age of just 51. She was a pioneer, an inspiration for female racers, hell, for racers all around the world. She touched the lives of so many people, all of those who met her, with just her feverish joy. She came, of course, to many people's attention through her appearances on Top Gear, which made her incredible skills and her warm smile and laugh famous around the world. And just yesterday, we had the sad news that Johnny Dumfries, British Formula 3 champion, Le Mans winner, and of course former F1 driver and teammate to Ayrton Senna at Lotus, had passed away after a short illness. He was a supremely talented racer who actually hid his aristocratic lineage as the Earl of Bute in order to be measured and judged on his merits rather than on his background. He was, by all means, a brilliant racing driver and someone who was incredibly well loved within the sport. Well, folks, that's just about it from this week's episode of This Week. I know, not the usual top-heavy F1 content that you're used to, but there'd been so much from testing, and with that video making predictions for the year, I don't know what else I could bring you. Safe to say that as we've been recording this, news has come through from Williams that they have signed a new technical director, Francois Xavier de Maison, known affectionately as FX, has joined the squad. He worked with Jost Capito, of course, at Volkswagen, oversaw rally success, oversaw the IDR, which blitzed Pikes Peak. Bold appointment. Fascinating to see how that new Williams team starts to be shaped under Capito's guiding hand. Yeah, cannot wait. And of course, everything starts this weekend in Bahrain with Formula 1 and of course Formula 2 as we watch the other racing championships. The many multitudinous, fantastic racing championships around the world continue and get started with their seasons and their pre-season testing. Thank you folks for tuning in. Thank you for following along. Next stop for us, Bahrain. But for now, from us, from this week's episode of This Week, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for the next episode of This Week.